morning, everyone. Welcome to also follow our followers online, who are, I hope, still more than 2,000. And it's my big pleasure to welcome you to the last day of EU Space Week 2023. This morning, we have two sessions ahead of us. The first one will be on EU space towards greater resilience and security, the EU space strategy for security and defense. And the second panel...
So you can decide when you want to deliver this payload or this specific object in orbit. You could embark different sensors, optical, RF, and different types, which will offer the capacity to have a global view of your environment for a wide perspective and to go closer to a target, to perform, for example, an inspection of this target, and to decide with the docking capacity or derived docking capacity if you open the door to action on this target if it's needed, for example, for deorbited. And with a high data engine, after performing your mission on one target, you can go to another target, to another orbit for a new threat or a new situation analysis. And last but not least, with refueling capacity, you can extend your mission to several months again and to stay longer in orbit, and so to offer service on a very long duration for your different customers. As you can see, based on a civilian cargo vehicle, you can derive a vehicle dedicated for security and defense use case by adding some capacities, but which are still based on the same setup of technologies.
Thanks so much. So it's really about having this ability to monitor what's going on in space and stay there, plus the ability to act indeed. Thank you very much. Raphael, you know that as part of the EU space strategy for security and defense, the Commission is proposing to put together an Earth observation governmental service. At some point, we were drawing a parallel with the PRS Galileo. The idea is like to create some kind of public regulated service for Earth observation. Can you tell us what commercial assets can provide in that context?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's very important to try to derive now the new kind of paradigm of procurement of space capabilities based on what we see happen around the world. And that paradigm is to share both sort of owned assets as well as commercial assets in order to augment whatever capability you have. So what we see is happening is there's a certain amount of capabilities which is considered critical, and that critical capability ends up being owned and operated by whatever institution is interested in possessing it, whether that's Ministry of Defense or appropriate EU institution. And I think that's always going to be there. I often compare this to people wanting to own their own car. We all own car because we want to make sure that there is a vehicle downstairs that is waiting for us ready. Most of the time we're not using it, but we are actually paying the price for having always access to it, right? But then I took Uber when I came over here today. That's because my car is left somewhere else. So you do want this additional services being able to complement whatever is it that you have already purchased that guarantees you that criticality, right? So we see that the commercial assets are going to be used in order to enhance and augment the capabilities that you already possess. Now, what's the benefit of doing that is exactly like with the Uber. I don't have a car in every single city. I probably could, but it would be a very expensive endeavor. If you use commercial assets, you're ultimately tapping into an infrastructure which is shared between many users. Now, that infrastructure is shared between many users, and as such has its limitations, and those limitations need to be understood, which is why you want to have your critical part of the infrastructure. But at the end of the day, from the economical point of view, if you want to reach a certain set of capabilities, it's actually way cheaper and more efficient to reach them through the use of both owned and shared assets, right? The second bit over here, of course, is such that the commercial assets tend to develop faster in terms of your technology cycle. The assets that you have purchased, you've purchased a certain level of capability, and then the next time you're going to refresh them is the next time you're going to repurchase, right? So of course that cycle has a certain lifetime. The commercial assets tend to be updated continuously, allowing you to tap into the most innovative technologies and sort of test them before your new procurement cycle. So it's actually I would say it should become a mandatory part of whatever future procurement system is going to be put in place.
Thank you so much, Rafael. So you mentioned indeed price issue, the agility, the ability for you to adjust very quickly your services. So I'd like to turn to you, Janelle, because indeed in the space strategy for security and defense, we recognize a trend that we see in many defense ministries, and that trend is like, how can we team up with new space companies from the defense ministry angle? So I'd like to hear from you, what's the angle of Spain? You mentioned PLD, for instance, but I'd like to hear from you how you do that and how you see this happening in practice.
I have to say first that we as armed force representative belonging to the Air and Space Force, I'm not responsible of the procurement process of Spain. Having said that, I can answer your question anyway, because I mean the new space and the small companies bring, to the space portfolio, let's say, fresh air, and we see that in the United States, which some startups at the beginning now are big companies providing great services and in a real record time. So that's one of the things that we should prosecute here in Europe. There's a lot of companies. Maybe the difficulty that they may find is just the big companies that don't allow them to come into the business, because those small companies develop specific technologies that somehow they are not providing themselves a specific capability, and that means that they should be integrated into the bigger project maybe. And that one of the challenges is just to have those new developers coming into the business, and this is one of the discussion that maybe starting this afternoon in the next forum could be discussed in Spain, for instance. And it was mentioned, we also look for a quicker way of developing the capabilities and a more, let's say, easy contractual framework, because currently both of them delays a lot of years or many years the release of the space capabilities. Not only space, but we are now talking specifically about the space. So if those companies can, foster or change the way we are normally doing businesses, what means a lot of time just for developing than the certification that takes as much time as the development, and then getting capabilities in advance, that's good news for us. And as well as we see the new space as another way of doing businesses, potentially a new way of doing businesses, sharing the costs potentially, and therefore sharing the risks. It could be pure commercial, and then taking the products or buying the products by whatever commercial agreement, or maybe a common development, but taking or sharing the risk in a traditional way. The armed forces are paying for everything and assuming are paying as well for the risk. Maybe not having what we have paid for at the end. So that's another fresh, idea that I would like to bring or to put into the table and discussion.
No, thank you so much. Sharing the cost and the risk, kind of a quick way of delivering products and services. So that brings me to you, Marcus, as well. You mentioned before getting things done. So I'd like to hear from you how you kind of try and team up with new space companies. There are plenty of new space companies in Germany. So I'd like to hear from you how you approach that. Plus, you had a long experience as well in defense industry. So I really want to hear from you as well from OHB, what it means, what it takes to collaborate with defense ministries.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So maybe before going into the specifics, what is important, I think, and that's our role to play, is also to anticipate the gaps of needs that the military has or will have. So I think the times are over where, we're just waiting for the famous RFI, RFP, and then we'll answer to requests that you have. We need proactively to invest into technologies that are for sure dual use, number one, and then at our own risk as well, because, we'll have proposed value to, the users, the military users, and then come up with those solutions. And I think, filling the gap can be done on two ways. One is very classical research that we do and then propose, but it's also really integrating and collaborating with the entrants, the new entrants into the markets, the startups. And we have found basically two ways how to do this. Either we lead, and that's on one of the programs that we currently do for the EU. We're leading 20 KMUs that we actually bring behind the solutioning. Number one. Number two is we take participations in new entrants just because we know they have a specific technology and we want to leave them in their thinking, in their speed, alone, but integrating it in a greater solution that we can propose to you. And the third one, and I think that's something that we now have experienced in the recent years, is we will put own capital into, let's say, own startups. RFA is one, so we're taking a huge bet on the need of launchers. We anticipated that shortage, and that's one where we invested capital. But also on the military side, just one example that we're currently doing in Luxembourg with something called Seaside IQ, where we try really to provide a solution to identify dark vessels, specifically now that we have seas on the shores of the European community that become NATO seas, and we have to, really be aware of what's going on there. Well, we set companies, people aside, they run it as an own company, but then we bring in the traditional players, not only us, but also from the defense industry, to bring in technology that startup actually needs to provide the service on a reliable basis later on to the military users. So I think, that's not the one way that we need to do it, but it comes from a strategy perspective, and that's really our responsibility of anticipating needs. And if you allow me just a comment on how to work, also with the military users. Number one is our industry has been traditional driven, I would say, by a technology push. We all love technology and what we can be done, and I think we need to reverse that trend, and it's happening by also bringing people from the military on our side that better understand, what is a specific theater of operations, where then, space services, I would say, play a crucial role to get strategic advantage, right? And that's something, that we'll invest in as well, is to bring really that knowledge on our side. It's not easy, but we'll find these people, we already have them on board, and then have a dialogue that starts very early on with you, what is actually needed, because I'm very concerned about the timing. I can see programs that have been designed against a threat in 2015 and it's still not delivered in 2023. So I think the threat has changed, the technology has changed, and that's given that we have very little money available. It's just that, we're compete, for a finite amount of resources. That's the process that we need to speed up. And last comment, we have to do that within the legal boundaries. A lot of things that are happening in the private industry, we have innovation forums, innovation dialogues. I know it's difficult to organize it because people will say, well, should I talk to this or that company, for a day about technology? Am I allowed to do this? But I think we need to open up the early stages of the process to better define what you need so that we can anticipate, and we need to really just, I think, jump over the process boundaries and just be pragmatic and say, look, it makes sense that we coordinate before, whether then in a procurement process, there's competition, that's okay, but I think that dialogue needs to happen very early.
Thanks so much. So new ways of working with new space companies, new ways of working with defense ministries. So excellent, and thank you so much for sharing your views on that. So we had a discussion on the opportunities that this space strategy for security and defense can offer to you. Let's focus a bit on the challenges. I mean, we're all aware it's a complex endeavor. It will be a complex journey. But I'd like to hear from you where you see key challenges in the implementation of this strategy. Generally, you mentioned the need to translate in military terms what diplomats or civilian guys have put on a piece of paper. We'll have to do the same translation when it comes to Council conclusions. Member states do agree on a Council conclusion, then we need to sit together to understand exactly what it means. So we'll all have that challenge of translating things. But let's start with you, General. So in terms of the key challenge when it comes to the implementation of that strategy, we've heard from Laetitia as well, don't stop at declaration. We need actions. That's precisely what we need to do. But can you tell me what is the key challenge that you see?
Consider that the key challenges at the end will require, as Laetitia told us before, actions, pure actions, not only words. The first is just to be sure that the concept stated in the strategy is applied. I mean, the real dual use of space assets are put from the very beginning, even in the development phase of whatever space system the European Union is planned to deliver. Alice Square is one of the things, There's some sort of measures that can be put in the design from the very beginning related to the security, to make that critical asset more safer, yeah. And that's one of the challenges. Is just to believe that this is a reality and then put that into the real program. Yeah, that's one of the challenges. And the other one is just because, I mentioned before the European Union mandate regarding defense is limited. As you know, it's pretty much relying on the member states. So the second challenge is just for the member states to have a clear commitment to cooperate and to take the best use of the potential European funding, making a common approach to whatever is key and critical capabilities, not only military, everything, but considering that most of them will have that dual use. For me, that's the two key challenges.
Action and funding. Thank you so much. Pierre, on the exploration company, you mentioned the fact that you've done fundraising. You're still in the process, of course, you will have, I guess, other rounds to come. Can you tell us how private investors stand on developing business in support of defense?
In fact, there's no major difference between development for defense or development for other use case, but most important for investors is to be sure that your product will answer market needs. So you need to show that as quick as possible, show that your product is answering this market need. So that means that they are ready to fund non-recurring costs if we are able to sign service contract with potential customers. So that means if we are convinced that you have defense perspective for your product, you need to sign a contract with defense customer, even if its service is offered in 2, 3, 4 years, but to be sure that you are really answering the customer needs. That's what we have done. We have Vaxium, for example, for cargo. We have signed a contract for 2027, but it's clear that our product is answering their needs for a cargo service. And what we want to do also with ESA for the answers to the European needs. So that's the first important point for investors. Second point is to show that you are consistent with your schedule, with your cost. You are always working with no delay and with no overcost. That's what we are doing in the extraction company since 2 years, because we are based on a very experienced team, mixing also young talents. So that's very important to show that you deliver what you have promised, and that, of course, that's a key point for investors.
Thank you so much. So, responding to the market need, being consistent with your scale and milestones, basically that's key for investors, be it working for defense customers or for other customers. So that's quite reassuring to hear that they're not applying specific rules for the defense customer. Rafael, I'd like to hear from you. I mean, you explained very much what you are doing in support of Ukrainian defense armed forces. Can you tell us what you had to put in place inside your company to be able to provide services to the defense community, or any challenges that you have faced in working together with Ukrainian armed forces, to the extent you can reveal things?
Yeah, so of course it's you know, from our perspective, it's a fascinating collaboration, bringing together a startup-like mentality, very, you know, eager, fast-moving, technology-driven very often. You know, the military organization tends to be opposite in many of those aspects. It's also eager naturally, but it has it's more disciplined, it's more structured, it's more organized, it speaks different language. So combining those two worlds is something that you know, we've been learning over time, and it has been a very interesting learnings. You know, I think we have developed means and methods to actually work together very well now, as it has been sort of alluded to over here, sort of going about anticipating the needs of the user, understanding what they might need in the future, and then trying to make those investments early in advance rather than waiting for them, and sort of starting to address them early enough. On a practical note, you know, certain things that we have made, I think of course we've had to make significant investments into security, security-related things, both physical cyber security, but also security related to all sorts of standards in order to follow, for the data to be maintained and managed in a way which is you know, which makes the user ultimately comfortable. It's a decision-making data for somewhat critical decisions or extremely critical decisions. You want to make sure that that's managed accordingly. And then I think, you know, the second thing that we did is we actually showed how quickly you can adapt commercial systems. So we've made many technological changes. We've increased the downlink, we've decreased the downlink latency. So we took the speed that it takes from the actual image being acquired to the image being available to a user to a completely different level. We wanted to take it to basically as short time as possible, because the fresh information is the information that you need in order to make tactical decisions. Ultimately, we developed a whole new product service that guaranteed access to critical areas for the user. And third thing that we did is we actually established a collaboration in data processing and analysis. Both, it was new to us, how to extract appropriate information from the pictures, but also the user was not yet sort of fully trained, especially in such large amounts of SAR data. So that collaboration, which is sort of our part of our customer success operations right now, where we work with the user to jointly learn and understand how can we transform the raw information into more insights and decision, is something that we did as well.
That's very interesting, and that echoes very much what Marcus was explaining beforehand, as being very close to the needs of the users. So you mentioned security uplifting, new product services, new collaborative ways of, in terms of data processing. That's very interesting. Thank you so much. Marcus, according to you, broad question about the key challenge that you see in the implementation of this strategy.
First of all, let's be positive. I think two comments that I want to make. That we have a strategy on European level is a fantastic momentum for us to go back and say we should really talk. And I think that's I would say, don't underestimate, you know, that piece. And I just want to play that back to you, because we see that in the dialogue with the users, you know, every day. Look, key challenges. I think it's really the timing. We do have technology. We know even on dual purpose technologies how to use them differently. It's not only in our heads. It's almost ready, but it's the challenge is really that we get you know, the solution out there to provide the data that you need, the information you need to make the decisions. And I think what we need to work on, and I don't have an immediate solution on it, is to say how we really shorten the procurement process. And I think there are two things to it. One is, how do we do that within the legal framework that every state, you know, has to follow? And you know, it's not to change it, but you know, how could we do that, number one? And then number two, I think something, you know, that I called in a previous live, kind of left shift is, how do we have many discussions or as many discussions as possible about usage, which technology to use, how to implement it early on so that then, when we say we'll do it, the process, will be much shorter. I think those are two things that we need to focus on, but we also have a role to play, and I see that now in, Odin's eye as we're taking this forward, how we help, I would say, the partner states that, work on that solution to come from, yes, we want to do the program to, technical terms like what's the statement of work, what's the governance, who signs the process and the final note for budget release. And I think that's where we also need to, let's say, be more proactive and be an engagement lead together with you within the boundaries of the legal framework of each country.
Thank you very much. I'd like now to take a few minutes to focus on one particular aspect, which is getting key, which is cybersecurity. We're all aware that space is becoming the next digital asset. One, two, it's getting more and more strategic. So it means that the exposure to cyber attacks is getting higher. So this is something that is very close to the heart of the Commission, of the European External Action Service. That's something that we want to tackle, and we were alluding to that into the Space Strategy for Security and Defense. We are proposing very concrete measures. One is the EU Space ISACs, the Information Sharing Analysis Center that we are deploying together with EUSPA. Two, the EU Space Law. You know that we have as a project to establish an EU space law to collectively enhance the level of security and resilience of our space assets. But I'd like to hear from you, from the industry side, whether you consider indeed cyber as a growing threat when it comes to the space business, and what's your assessment of the measures that have to be put in place to collectively enhance the level of resilience and cybersecurity of our space assets. Maybe we can start with you, Rafael, if you want.
Sure, of course. I mean, the answer to the first question, do we consider this as a threat, is yes. It's
you reassure me.
it's a very serious threat. I think it's very often forgotten that there are sort of two levels to cybersecurity item. We tend to enjoy thinking more about the security of the assets in space. I actually think that those are perhaps somewhat more secured counterintuitively. The ones which are less secured are the one on the ground. The IT infrastructure of the companies, the security of the ground segment, that's actually significantly more vulnerable to threats. And without getting into details, that's kind of how we perceive, especially with the more modern assets in space. This is where companies need to make substantial investments. We have a dedicated team of 10 plus people focused on nothing else but by cybersecurity. We naturally are part of a shared service with 24/7 Center for Cybersecurity Response. I think that there is actually more that we can do on a European level across the companies in order to share best practices. I'm glad to hear about the sort of innovation sharing center. I think that is actually something that we can do very well. It's very frequent that different companies are at the edge of the development of certain resilience capabilities at different moments in time. We don't sell those capabilities. Sharing those knowledge pieces between us will be something that I hope is going to generally elevate everybody's security capabilities. I'm looking forward to consultation on the law and how will sort of this sort of cybersecurity aspect be addressed over there. It's not easy to address it in the law. I think we have to be very thoughtful to not make things less resilient at the end of the day or more challenging, but I do think that setting up a certain minimum set of requirements for everybody ultimately is important because your cybersecurity depends on the weakest link always, right? So if we don't have a common foundation, then it will be difficult to maintain this all the way. And now at the end of the day, I think that what we would see very useful is some sort of maybe a European institution coordinating activities around this. We actually coordinate our cybersecurity activities with different firms in different countries where we are present. For instance, in Finland, the entity that very often is called into this is actually a private company, F-Secure, which has a contract with government to then advise other companies on how to deal with threats like this. Establishing certain common knowledge base, knowing what's good, what's not, getting a certification would be something that we would like to see, so that there is actually a way to share this information in a consistent and structured way.
Thank you very much. Markus, on this one.
Maybe just taking your last point, sharing. I think we as companies were contributing to a greater good, which is security for the European citizens. So I think whatever we have to share to make everyone secure in terms of cyber has to be shared. It cannot become a commercial advantage from my perspective, specifically when we're operating in the military space. So I think that's something that we absolutely need to do. Two things maybe in addition to what you said. It's easier said than done, security by design. I still feel that, because we're integrating different technologies, on a satellite, for example, that we say, yeah, we do this, let's say we'll do the space asset and then we add a cybersecurity layer on top of it. Instead of saying, well, cybersecurity is a second nature, whatever we do on the space assets is cybersecured. And the market is that way too. You have cybersecurity companies and they provide services, but I think that's really a design change that we need to start in the heads of our engineers. And it's up to us to do that, number one. Number two, maybe is, I think this is a very different industry when it comes to size, from a customer's perspective or user's perspective and from a supplier perspective. So we're not in the greater consumer goods where there are thousands of companies doing stuff. So, the threats are maybe a little bit more diluted because, the attacker doesn't know where to attack. If I bring the military market, and the space market together, we have 90 MODs around the world, okay? And we may have, let's say 150, greater space companies that are out there. So it's, we as an industry are very easy to be, attacked. And I think that's an awareness that we need to create on management level and on people level to say, you're not that anonymous, number one. Number two, you are in an industry of interest because, well, that's where things are happening and where strategic advantage is being created. And I think it's a human resource issue, or let's say challenge, that we have to tackle as well, that everyone understands, this is how this industry works, this is how it works with our users, and hence there are certain behaviors that we need to start to really, foster across the industry.
Thank you very much. Pierre, how do you approach that dimension as well?
For sure, cybersecurity is a concern for us too, and I share all the thoughts of my colleagues. What could be important to develop at EU level is to adding to the fact to offer the ability to share information in a confident environment. This could be to offer also a capability to provide a security audit to our system or to our company to see if we are at a well level of security or if there's something to improve, and to offer high standards high standards that could be implemented by European companies. And one main concern also is to be careful with the supply chain, because if we make efforts on ourselves, on our own company, to be sure that our suppliers will do the same efforts and will take care of this cybersecurity problem as seriously as we do. So that's really something which is also important for us.
Thank you very much. General, we've heard about the need to have a common minimum requirements when it comes to cybersecurity, exchange of best practices, design change to onboard cybersecurity at early stage, not too late, change of behavior, exchange of information, supply chain. So you, as the user, of space services. What do you expect when it comes to cybersecurity?
Well, please, if you allow me, let me say something about
Please.
cyber. You know that cyber sometimes is a concern for everybody. That's clear. Because it's related to your question anyway, because it's one of the priorities. I believe that to have cyber integrated from the very design, the architecture of the system has a lot to say regarding how vulnerable you are regarding the cyber, and that's one of the things that we have to consider from the very beginning. Second thought is just sometimes it's just the government or even the organizations who are doing their own crypto chip and crypto algorithms. And you know, if it doesn't matter how complicated it is, at a certain point in time, it's vulnerable anyway. So that's something that we have to think about. What scares me is the combination in between the quantum computing and artificial intelligence in terms of that. And we should be ahead of the development of both technologies if we want to be safe. Yeah? So pretty much with this is just one of the answer of your final question. You know, this is what we expect is just to have the appropriate capabilities, the priorities, and the sort of different capabilities have already been mentioned. And we need to make sure that we, as the European Union, are prepared to protect them for whatever reason, and if the political guidance allows that, even to produce a response to whoever is just producing that damage. It doesn't matter if it's a commercial or a pure military. If it harms our interest, we should be able to produce any response. I'm not saying that and don't get me wrong, I don't say that we want to weaponize or militarize more than whatever is the space, just to be ready to play a role in this, because otherwise we will be well behind.
Thank you so much. And that brings me to my very final question to all of you in 30 seconds each. Looking ahead and focusing on kind of the key innovation or the key technologies where we as EU, member states, or maybe industry, we should invest in the future when it comes to security resilience. What would you advise us to look at?
Well, yeah, one of them is just the way we do things is just maybe we have to change the way we put capabilities on the space. Instead of relying on a single very powerful satellite, we may go for a sort of a constellation just for resilience. I mentioned one of the technologies is just the quantum computing, the artificial intelligence, robotics as well, you know, sensoring. So there's a lot of room.
That's not just one, that's a full menu indeed.
Yeah, because I strongly believe that space is one of the best cradle to develop disrupting technologies. Okay. So just get use of that advantage.
Thank you so much. Markus.
I would say we haven't talked about that much here, but I like what you said. You know, quantum, we need absolutely to secure the advantage we have on the quantum. I think it becomes, everyone is in the race, and what does that mean we need to collaborate even more, I think, on European level. It cannot be, I would say, the endeavor of one or a couple of states. I think that's really where Europe has to play a role, so that we keep the speed and also that we use all the assets that we have around. For me, that's, I would say, maybe the most critical field that we have. The other one is, and then I conclude here, is let's reuse assets we have and complement them with additional, let's say, space assets, because that brings us much faster to the level of threat protection that is required.
Thank you very much, Markus. Rafael?
Yeah, so I think if looking into the future, what we should invest more is I would actually just say quite plainly space. There is just a ton of technologies related to quantum, AI, rocket capabilities. Space does combine all of those developments, including robotics and so on. And we see that it is one of those domains today that is going to present very quickly a strategic difference, whether in the military domain or in the civil commercial domain, right? Whether we are going to protect ourselves from natural catastrophes or use of fishing, illegal fishing, or security and defense, space seems to be inevitably going to play a very critical role over the next few years. Looking in the future, what I see as a change of paradigm is, I think we've talked about many different things as if they existed in separation, GPS, communication, Earth observation. The same way as it happened
Galileo,
with
you
the
mean?
other domains, it will have to all be orchestrated.
Very good.
As already mentioned, I think that to add action capacity to what we know on space already existing capacity is an important topic, and which needs to have closer relationship between technology provider and operational user to be sure that we go in the good direction and that we implement tools which are really able to be used by operational users for the future.
All right, thank you so much. I'd like to call on stage now Philippe Bertrand. Philippe Bertrand is the chair of the EU Space Program Security Accreditation Board. We've heard a lot about how can we make our services, space-based service, much more resilient, and the SAB is playing a key role when it comes to the accreditation of key services. So I'd like to very much thank you all, and I'd like to give now the floor to Philippe for making concluding remarks before we turn to the next one. Thank you, Philippe. Please.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation here in Seville. Following this very important and interesting session addressing the challenges and opportunities related to the implementation of the EU space strategy for security and defense, and having in mind a Joseph Borrell declaration stating that without security there can be no future in space, let me briefly explain how the Security Accreditation Board of the EU Space Programme, SAB to be short, is assessing today and will continue assessing the implementation of some elements identified in this European strategy. After recalling the role of the SAB, I will briefly explain how SAB decisions are prepared and how we work. As defined in the regulation, the SAB is the Security Accreditation Authority of all the EU Space Programme components: Galileo, EGNOS, Copernicus, SSA, GovSatcom, and the SAB is the Security Accreditation Authority of the new EU Space Flagship Programme, Union Secure Connectivity, or IRIS². The SAB advise the Commission, for example, on the security requirement, as we did on IRIS² at the beginning of this year, and the SAB takes decisions. The SAB takes decisions in particular on the security accreditation strategy applicable to every EU space program component. We take decisions as well on the approval of the satellite launches and on the authorizations to operate the ground stations. We take decisions on the authorizations to operate the systems in their different configurations and for the various services they provide. For the satellite launches, for example, we have final decisions to take just before the launch. All our decisions are taken by the member states in a strictly independent manner regarding the European Commission and the other bodies involved, such as EUSPA or ESA. We prepare our major decisions as far in advance as possible to give the program the maximum flexibility. And we have standardized the accreditation conditions for the most important milestones, such as service declaration. The standards conditions include 4 main elements. The first one, obviously, the program needs to cope with the acceptable risk level. Second, we need to validate the security procedure of the system in operation, including in response to threat attacks. Third, and it was specifically addressed during the session, we have included maintenance conditions, such as cyber maintenance or evidence of system resilience. Those conditions are absolutely essential because users may use the same services during decades, while the threat capabilities will continue to evolve. Fourth, the standards conditions define the main security checks the SAB will undertake, It can be system audit, audit on operation, or cyber audits. What is essential for the SAB is to assess the real efficiency of the security measures in place and to identify when additional evaluation campaigns or risk mitigation measures are needed. In fact, we are very concrete. We assess the reality. To use words used during the session, we check that things have been done appropriately and that the user have the level of security they deserve. To perform our duties, the SAB is supported by the Security Accreditation Department established within a USPA, with an effective segregation with the rest of the agency, and the department is working exclusively for us. And of course, the SAB could not work without all the support of the member states' experts. With all those experts, we perform more and more cyber audit and penetration tests to evaluate the system resilience and the capability to react to threat attacks. There is, and it was mentioned during the session as well, an absolute need for a robust cybersecurity approach to safeguard the EU space program components and the services for the users. I can tell you without any surprise that the cyber activity will continue growing. We will continue to advise the Commission. We will continue to test all the EU systems, and we will continue to recruit, in particular, cyber experts. To conclude, the SAB is deeply involved in the evaluation of the resilience and protection of the EU space systems and services, and the capability to respond to threat attacks. The development by the SAB of accreditation standards helps breeding as well a security culture within the space industrial sector, and cybersecurity is key. The SAB independence gives the insurance for the users that the security is independently assessed and that they can, consequently, confidently utilize the EU space services. As one of the questions was the challenges, for the SAB, a key challenge is the huge increase of activities. We don't only address all the EU space program components, we address as well not only Galileo first generation, but Galileo second generation. Not only EGNOS in service, but as well the future of EGNOS. And now we have the new challenge with Union Secure Connectivity. And more activity means more responsibilities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philippe. And I'd like to really thank all the panel as well, the panelists, for this very interesting and fascinating panel. This security, space, defense is their driver, is here to stay with us. So this is only the beginning of the journey. So big applause to you. Thank you so much. Very good. Thank you so much.
So let's bear with us. We're having a last session for this EU Space Week 2023. This is the session on space traffic and management. It will be moderated by SST team leader from USPA, João Alves. I think, João, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marie, for the introduction. So, good morning, everyone. So I'm going to have the pleasure to moderate this last panel of the Space Week on space traffic management. And on the topic, I have a video that I'm going to present you for the first time on behalf of the European Commission as to present you what the EU is doing on STM. So please. Can we have the video, please? Yes, thank you.
Space has never been more accessible than today. Satellites are getting smaller and smaller and are being produced and launched more frequently at lower costs thanks to significant advancements in electronics, digital technologies, and manufacturing. As human activity in space continues to grow, so does space debris. This increasing congestion poses significant risks to space infrastructure, safety, and future orbit usability, as well as the services those assets provide to societies. With space traffic management, or STM, the European Union is at the forefront of shaping a new era of space governance, safeguarding EU interests in full respect of the respective competencies of the EU and its member states. STM encompasses the means and the rules to access, conduct activities in, and return from outer space safely, sustainably, and securely. The EU approach to STM is based on 4 avenues, each contributing to the overarching objective of responsible and effective space traffic management, from assessing STM requirements and impacts and enhancing EU space surveillance and tracking capabilities, to fostering the STM regulatory aspects of the Union level and promoting the EU STM approach at an international level. For effective STM operations, capabilities to continuously observe space traffic are essential. That is why EU SST, as the operational backbone of the EU STM approach, is consolidating its sensor network. To support this consolidation, the European Commission set up the EU Industry Startup Forum on STM, where EU stakeholders and industry jointly develop research and development priorities. Through tender processes, more than 80% of the available EU SST budget goes to the EU industry. This fosters the industrial ecosystem, strengthens operational STM capabilities, and enhances EU autonomy. The European economy, society, and citizens rely on space-based applications like communications, navigation, and Earth observation. Keeping these systems safe and operational is paramount. By working with national authorities, EU industry, and international partners, the EU is paving the way for a responsible use of space. Together, we safeguard the skies above, ensuring that space remains an accessible and plentiful resource for generations to come. Space traffic management. Safeguarding space operations.
Okay, so after the premiere of this video, I have the pleasure to invite to the stage first Nathalie Lecam from EASA, Project Manager in Higher Airspace and Operations. Hello, Nathalie. Then Rudolf Munoz from the European Commission, Policy Officer at DG DEFI's B1, Secure Connectivity and Space Surveillance. Hi, Rudolf. Then Pascal Fauché, Chair of the SST Partnership from CNES, Defense and Security. Then Pierluigi Righetti from EUMETSAT, Flight Dynamics Manager. And last but not least, Alberto Águeda from GMV, Director of Space Surveillance and Traffic Management. Hi, Alberto. Okay. So good morning. Thank you for being in this last panel again of the Space Week. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. We know that space is becoming more and more congested, and I would say that we all agree that we need to do something about it. And in fact, we're already doing something about it, as we've seen in the video that was shown before. And I would like to start with Rudolf, with Commission, as to ask you if you can elaborate more from what we've seen on the video, on the 4 avenues, on what the EU is doing on STM, and perhaps also touch on what was briefly mentioned in the last panel regarding the EU space law, the ongoing work on that aspect as well.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. So indeed, in space traffic management, since the last 5 years, has became really a real topic. Of course, space traffic management was handled before, but in the last 5 years, due to the increase of launches, due to indeed the importance of the use of space services, became really a real important topic. And you can see it even at the UN level. There is a report which has been adopted at the UN level last month, listing 6 major threats for humanity, and one of them is space debris. I mean, it's rather incredible. Why? Because indeed, because of space debris, we might lose access to space services. So it's really an important element. So what I would like to do is, of course, I will not repeat what you have seen in the video, but I would like to tell you what we have done following the adoption of the communication that we have adopted in March 2022. So it's nearly a year that we have this communication. And this communication, and it's very important, you will see, had 2 titles. The first one was an EU approach for STM, and second, an EU contribution for a global challenge. So first, and why an EU approach to STM? Because we thought that it was necessary to gather all the member states and to define an EU approach on STM. Of course, while respecting the competencies of the member state, but it's very important to make sure that we all agree about what we are saying. And this is a bit the interest of this communication, because it tries to have an holistic approach, trying to tackling all the elements that normally are linked to STM. So here, on the first part, really on the part related, so what we have done, you have 10 actions in this communication. And the first part is related to the capacities. There I will leave that to Pascal Fauché, because indeed, like the video said, and it's very important for us, EU SST is the one in charge to deal with this capacity for us. And this is very important because when you want to act in the field of STM, even at the global level, what is important is what you are able to see. Indeed, more you see, more you are listening, and this is very important. But this part will be developed by Pascal. On the industry side, you have seen that we have developed this forum. We had already 4 meetings. The 5th meeting would be now in the 15th of November. So if you are not registered, you are still welcome. Do not hesitate. Go on the webpage of the DigiDefis, and you will find all the information in order to register. This is a meeting which is a hybrid meeting in Brussels, but as well online. So do not hesitate, please. The last events were quite successful, with more than 150 participants coming from more than 17 companies. And this is really important for us, because if we want to be able to see what's happening in the sky, we need to have the best technology.
Stronger, to be a more relevant actor in Europe. And I want also to thank you. We have here today the director of the Spanish Space Agency, Miguel Bello, that is with a lot of efforts creating this amazing adventure that is make this new national agency. But what we wanted from the beginning when we started to prepare this week was to start it with this ministerial meetings at the beginning of the week with the European Space Agency, with informal meeting of ministers, also with meetings with other regions as Latin America. That is one of the most important regions also for Europe. And we wanted to make this at the beginning of the week to start talking about autonomous access to space, technological sovereignty, economic security, all these themes that were so relevant for the ministers, for policymakers, for politicians, for Europe, for our society. But then, after that, we wanted to also to share these conclusions, we wanted to share these priorities with the main ecosystem of the space in Europe. And this is why, in the Space Week, we thought and we choose the main challenges of Europe to be there as in the plenary, to discuss with you, like raw materials, like connectivity, like, of course, accurate data, Copernicus and all the space programs to monitor and to fight and to adapt to climate change, because it's not for future generations that we are talking now. As Antonio Guterres says, it's the burning planet, and as Carlo Bontempo said yesterday, this October was the warmest October record ever. So this is not future generation. We are this generation that we are fighting against climate change. And these and the space programs are one of the main tools to monitor and to adapt to climate change. But also, we have been talking about the space to catalyze, as a catalyst for growth, innovation, for entrepreneurship. Of course, we have been talking about raw materials. We have been talking about these kind of instruments as Cassini that also promote new startups, new entrepreneurship, that because we want to also to have new becomers, we want to have new people in this bubble that is the space bubble that we wanted to open it. And I'm not going to forget users. Of course, how am I going to forget users? Users are and should be at the heart of the European space programs. Because why are we doing that? We should communicate better with users. We should put end users and intermediate users at the heart of what we are doing on the space programs to create solutions for them. So the users were also a main part of this Space Week. And of course, but for me, the main conclusion, the main learning of this week, of these 2.5 days that we were preparing long time ago with these beautiful people, Marie, Carmen, Belen, and all these people from DEFIS, the Commission, EUSPA, was this community of people, this community of colleagues, of friends. This place is not only on the plenary where the things are, of course, happening, but it's outside the plenary where collaboration, where businesses, where projects are being created, are being launched, are being fostered. We came here not only to hear, of course, what is happening in Europe, what is the main challenges of Europe, and what is the solution of a space and the contribution of a space to that, but to be with this ecosystem, to be with these people, to be with our friends. Because at the end, this is a community of friends. Friends that we have also to open a little bit. This community, this bubble of the space should be also open. And we have also some of the experiences of the speakers this week that also give us another approach on how, from the space, can we also solve other end users' problems. And finally, why? Why are we doing that? Why are we using the space? Why are just making and talking and investing on all these technologies? So we are making that, and we have to remember that, to serve to our society, to serve to the European values, security, peace, sustainability, well-being, human rights. That are the main values, and the space is one of the pillars of these values. It's one of the pillars for a more stronger, united, sustainable Europe that should be closer to its citizens. So thank you very much to be here, to come to Seville, to be connected online, and I hope to see you, of course, on the next date, on the next year. And I'm so happy also that I will not be preparing that, but I will be supporting you. Thank you very much. Thank you.